Welcome to Emotional Sobriety. Welcome to the pod. We got a new guest today. Thank you for bearing with us in our dark week. We were off for last weekend, but we're back here today with Allen and Patrick, who's got a lot to tell us about emotional sobriety because he's been involved.
Well, let's talk about how we met, Patrick. Let's introduce everybody to that. So you started these workshops for the Berlin group, and how long ago was that?
Thank you for inviting me, by the way. I love you both, you guys. You know, you've been tremendous support to our group and to me personally. So first of all, thank you for that.
Yeah.
And I was living in Berlin, and in 2019 had started a workshop group on a Sunday, and we were the format for that was to use Joe McHugh's step study videos from YouTube. I love Joe McHugh, Joe from Joe and Charlie. And I found that he explains the steps so well, and has a good sense of humor as well. So that was good. And so we were taking we were just a group of us, maybe 12 to 20 people would show up on a Sunday, and we'd do a step a week. And people would get homework assignments, and it was a lot of newcomers coming in and wanting first time around the steps. And then COVID hit, of course, and we went online with that meeting as a beginners meeting. And then we wanted to continue with the step workshops, so we started doing just using the Joe McHugh method on a Monday, and we would get 10 people show up, maybe 20. And that was fine. We weren't trying to build anything. We were just trying to keep sober ourselves and help out some people who were new to the program. It was really a beginner's meeting focus. And then one of our members was having difficulties in his sobriety with his emotions. He said to me that we didn't seem to know anything about emotional sobriety, and that's what he wanted to know about. And he had really, this is a person, and if you go to enough meetings, you'll find, everybody's welcome. Sometimes people can get disruptive and maybe be asked to leave, and he was that was the case with him, and I was trying to work with him, and so he said, well, you don't know anything about emotional sobriety either, so I don't know if you can help me. I said, well, let me see if I can find somebody who does, and maybe he'll help you. So that was when I started Googling emotional sobriety and see Dr. Alan Berger, emotional sobriety. And I listened to you on YouTube, and I thought, wow, this guy is great. And that's when I contacted you.
Okay, that's the story behind it.
That's the story.
Gotcha. That's amazing. That's an inspirational story for everyone. Look,
Well, yeah, because here was a guy, in AA they say, you're either an example or a warning, and sometimes the people who are a warning are the best example.
No, say that again so people can hear that.
Well, I've often heard it said, and I used this line in AA: you're either an example or a warning. And sometimes the people who are a warning, we say, oh, that guy don't, do like, well, maybe he's helping you more than anybody else.
Yes.
Go try to help him, and maybe you'll find out a lot more.
Right on.
So that guy was one of those guys, and believe me, I've been that guy myself. In AA, I've been an example and I've been a warning, and so I consider myself a double winner.
Yeah, so you reached out to me at that point and you said, hey,
that's right. That's right.
Group?
That's right. That's when I reached out to you. You came along, and all of a sudden we had a Zoom, the basic Zoom, which allows 100 people to come in, and we'd put out some flyers saying that you were coming along for a couple of weeks. We've been sending out flyers, and there were a lot of WhatsApp groups sprouting up in Europe more than in the United States at that time. And so I was on a whole bunch of those. So I just sent flyers out saying, Dr. Alan Berger, workshop at Emotional Sobriety. And lo and behold, we filled up to the 100-person capacity right away. if you remember, and then we didn't record it. We didn't, and so, we were all new to Zoom. We were in a meeting. We were unsure. We hadn't taken a group conscience about recording. And so when we took a group conscience, we said, well, rather than sort of deal with, out of respect for the AA traditions, really not trying to do an end run around the traditions, saying, well, we're autonomous, we can do what we want, which I kind of disagree with, but I think there are parameters, and I'm all for the singleness of purpose of AA meetings, and we wanted to invite others who could avail themselves of this great information. So we decided as a group that we would just do it not under the auspices of AA, but just create a group that was a recovery group open to anybody who's interested in the subject matter we cover. And then once we did that, and once we increased our Zoom capacity to 500 people, all of a sudden we were getting 200, 400 people show up at meetings. And then we increased it to 1,000 for one meeting, and we had about over 900 show up. This was at the height of COVID, when people were really, it started to explode, this whole idea of doing workshops, and it's ongoing, by the way. I sort of thought after, when we got into 2022, well, maybe this will be a phase, and everybody will be back in their live meetings. But actually, there is a need for these types of groups, and there are many of them now on Zoom. And this idea of doing workshops open to everybody has really taken off in the recovery community.
Seen that too. I think that there's a real upsurge about an interest in emotional sobriety specifically. And, you
That's
did
right.
a great job at really opening up that whole area and inviting people in that can contribute to the discussion in any kind of ways, which is what I did. I looked at all these other master psychotherapists in terms of how what they were talking about was related to what Bill Wilson was talking about in emotional sobriety, and you're continuing with that tradition, which I love. I love the workshops that you've been offering at the Berlin group on Mondays.
Well, thanks, Alan. You were an inspiration too when you used the line, recovery is the discovery of new possibilities.
Yeah.
And in fact, we have that on all our flyers now. It says Friendly Circle Berlin Workshop. Discover new possibilities.
There it is.
It's on our website. We have a website. I mean, look, this we didn't plan any of this.
That's
It
right.
just kind of happened organically, because people like you came along, and then others who came along and said, I'd like to do service, and I have this idea. Why don't we try this? And we were just open to these new possibilities. And because of the freedom of not being restricted by having to have a business meeting every 2 minutes. I understand, by the way, I go to AA business meetings, and I'm all for the group conscience, and I'm all for the traditions. We're not trying to, do an end run around anything. We're just trying to do something still within the recovery community, but just open to everybody. That's all.
Patrick, I really enjoyed when you visited me in the desert recently, or you weren't necessarily visiting me, but you were out here doing some business, and we went to a meeting. And I love how thoughtfully and expansively you talk about recovery. And you've been at this a while in different iterations, but I'd love to hear about, a recovery focused more around emotional sobriety, what that means to you and what it's done for you, especially in like these last few tumultuous years.
Sure. Well, I came into AA in 1989. My sobriety date was April 14th of 1989. And in San Francisco, it was a very, very big, broad kind of AA meeting scope, big city, San Francisco especially. So it had many influences, and I enjoyed that. And I don't think I missed a meeting for any day in my first 7 years. And then I became very successful in my career thanks to being sober. like we say, I go to work, and when I'm at work, I do my work. That's what we do. That's the sober life. And so I then got into business and so on, and it became successful and everything else involved as a partner with a business, and that took a lot of my focus away. And then was then married. We had two children, and I became very, very busy. And I would say that I was never a very emotionally dysregulated person. I was pretty even keeled. That's just my nature. Um, I would say that one of the things I learned a lot from emotional sobriety is how to be in a relationship. I wasn't very good at that. And so, and I would say I wasn't dealing with my tendency to be a workaholic. So there was a lot of things that, I was going to meetings, but it became over time more like just tick the box, go to AA. I've been to the meeting. I did 3 meetings this week, and then every now and again I would lapse and not go to meetings for a month or two, and maybe my ex-wife would say something like, "You need to go to a meeting," you know. So definitely, emotional sobriety to me isn't just for people who are emotionally dysregulated. It's for anybody, and even you say that, Alan, because the tools of emotional sobriety will help in so many ways. In how to be in a relationship is number one, I think. Again, as so many people come to our meetings say, I've been in AA 20 years. I've never heard of emotional sobriety. What is this all about? It seems to be this secret, we don't talk about that, and even in AA, you'll hear people say things like, oh, the chapter reads into action, not into feelings. And, so it's, hey, nothing. I would never put down AA. I'm just saying what goes on, right? The AA is a microcosm of society, and that's what goes on in society with guys, and especially. And so I think that the tools of emotional sobriety that Alan's drawn out of this emotional sobriety letter, his breakdown of the letter, are phenomenal. The book, The 12 Essential Insights, is phenomenal. And your work is phenomenal. Everybody, Alan, so many guys have thanked me for you. So I said, well,
nice. Nice to hear. It's nice to hear.
Yeah.
No, I resonate with you too, because I do think that its greatest application is how we're in relationship with other people, our ability to love and be in a healthy relationship. It's so pertinent and relevant to that dimension of our life, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And how to, it takes a lot of work. I mean, as of course we all talk about, their emotional age gets stunted. Our emotional age is what the age we were when we started drinking, and I started when I was 13. And I became a very heavy drinker daily at the age of 16. And a maintenance drinker, always went to work, but always worked around the booze industry, restaurants, then nightclubs and bars and so on. And everybody drank. We did a lot of other stimulants to keep us awake and keep us working. So that was my lifestyle. That's all I knew. I didn't know how to be in a marriage. I hadn't got any tools for that, and became overwhelmed. Work then became an escape to get away from it. And so the pressures of life in general. And I ended up having a relapse after 24 years of being sober over all of this. So that's where I was a good example for many years. And then, like I said, I'm a warning too. Yeah. I relapsed after 24 years. I had a nervous breakdown. I ended up in the psych ward before I drank. And it was through prescription drug, when you go to the emergency room having a panic attacks and you're falling apart, they're not going to be like bring you over to a couch and sit you down and have a psychotherapist like Carl Jung come along. They're just going to see what meds can we put this guy on so he doesn't jump off the bridge, to cover our insurance. But that's the truth of the healthcare system in the United States. Anyway, that was my experience of it. We
Yep.
speak from our own experience. I'm sure there are good examples out there. That was my experience. And so the prescription medication that I started abusing was playing havoc with my mind, and I found I couldn't work, and I couldn't be at home, and I couldn't seem to be anywhere. So I thought, screw it, I know what works. One day I picked up, and the crazy part, it worked for me for a while until it didn't. You know, the old story. But I drank for 5 years, and that's how I ended up in Germany. I went through a divorce.
Did divorce happen after the relapse, or did the divorce precipitate?
During the relapse? Yeah, it was too much for my dear ex-wife. We're very close friends, and the kids were very, very close today, thankfully, because I love them dearly. And but they hadn't seen me drinking. It was a shock, so it was as amicable of a divorce as we could have done. We sort of made arrangements, and I separated. We separated. I decided I would go to Berlin, Germany, where I used to go as a teenager when I was living in London, to get drunk. I thought maybe now in my late 50s I'll do that again.
How did you get back to the program, Patrick?
Well, I was in Berlin. I was going to, you can drink around the clock in Berlin. Close to where my apartment, there were 4 or 5 24-hour bars, and I was drinking 24/7. And I got to the point of having to have alcohol in my system, otherwise I'd get the DTs, And but I got very, very sick, and I wasn't treating it because I didn't have a doctor over there. And I was just going to the pharmacy and getting different things. And I didn't know how sick I was, but I was coughing up blood. And I just decided one day I better get back to San Francisco, go to the emergency room at General Hospital. That thought came to my mind in my morning meditation. No, just kidding. But I did. And then, and when I got there, they said that I had pneumonia, quite advanced, and could hardly breathe, And I don't know, when I think about it, how I even managed to get there, but I did. We're very tenacious, us alcoholics and addicts. And so then at General, they said, well, you need to stop drinking. That's an advanced stage alcoholism, and liver, everything. I was totally overweight and bloated, and I was a mess. So they gave some medication, like an anti-abuse type thing. And so I said, what'll happen if I drink? Oh, you can't drink on that. You'll be violently ill. So I thought, well, I know what to do. Go to the nearest bar, get a drink, and be violently ill. I've done that before.
Wow. Yep. Right on, huh?
So I just continued right on, and that went on for a few more months. And then I was back in the Bay Area, though. And my brother, who's in the program, my ex-wife, my children, friends in the program, one of whom was the very first guy I sponsored in AA, Stephen, came to the rescue, and they did an intervention. Really, they just I didn't know where I was going, but I was in the back of a car being driven to Henry Olaf House in San Francisco. Put in a plug here for Henry Olaf House in San Francisco, the oldest rehab facility in the city, and it's a not-for-profit, and they have very good rates, and they're focused very much on 12-step and AA. And that was in 2018 in June. And I fell down the stairs twice. I was a mess,
You were a mess.
And about 4 days in, I started going to group, and could at least sit down and take something in. And then when I went back to my first AA meeting, I felt I was home, And I felt kind of like when I first came in, just throw in the towel and just do what's suggested. So I'm a big fan of basic AA, and I went to that home group Monday through Friday for a year, and then other meetings on the weekend, and sometimes a meeting at night. And, I just focused on smart feet recovery, as we call it, around the rooms, and do all the suggestions, get commitments, and so on and so forth, get a sponsor. It very, very nuts and bolts of AA, which I love. They'll always be reliable, no matter what, no matter how much I know about emotional sobriety. I still need to have that. You know, what is it they say? Herb likes to use the line, feet on the ground and head in the clouds,
Right.
rather than the other way around. I mean,
Right.
sort of,
Yeah.
yeah.
When
We,
you say throw in the towel, I understand that so intimately, the kind of surrender that you're describing. And it was the alcoholism was a project of, in a strange way, it was self-care. It was like it was a solution that had worked for you in the past that you were clinging to. And at a certain point, you just had the writing was on the wall. I think as a lot of people who get sober, at a certain point, the critical mass just gets, if it doesn't kill you, right, it gets to a point where you just need to pivot. And especially since you'd had experience with recovery before, you had 24 years, you had some sense at least of like how you might be able to get a grip back on, right?
Yeah, like that's a good point. You know, in therapy world they call it a maladaptive coping strategy.
right.
And or as Joe and Charlie used to say it, I love Joe and Charlie, is when they would read the big book and dissect every sentence. When they would get to the 9-step promises, they would start with when I took a drink, and they would read each promise. When I took a drink, fear of people and of economic insecurity would leave me. When I took a drink, I would intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle me. And it's so interesting that you can preface each promise with when I took a drink. Those promises came true for us. But they get to a point where they backfire and take us down.
Yeah.
You know, it's cunning, baffling, powerful.
Yeah.
So you're right. I mean, there's always, no matter what the behavior is, the idea of looking at it as a coping strategy rather than I've always one of certain themes I kind of go like the 7 deadly sins, things. I mean, these are just, I like maladaptive coping strategy. I can kind of relate. I can see, yeah, that was me. It's why I did it, and takes away the shame and the guilt, and can see myself as a sick person rather than a bad person. And yeah.
So true. So true. And what happens with those things is, the way Ernie Larson says it, which I love him. His writings about recovery are so powerful and so insightful. He says, we're looking for the right thing in the wrong places.
There
And
you
the way
go.
that I translate that is that we're looking for that freedom, for that emotional freedom. And when I drank, I was free.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Those other
Yeah.
things bother me, right? I mean, for a very brief period of time, I had relief.
Yeah.
And the problem is that it really wasn't changing anything. It was creating an artificial freedom. And that you and I now, can see is that, boy, when you start to get a hold of these principles of emotional sobriety, you can create a spiritually and psychologically grounded freedom.
Yeah.
Right? One that really can, as Bill said, can and does work under any conditions whatsoever.
Right. Right.
Yeah. No, it is an exciting thing. I mean, it's very exciting. And boy, I didn't know all this about your story, Patrick. I'm quite touched and moved. Thank God
Yeah.
you're okay. I'm so grateful that you're here with us.
Yeah. It was touch and go for quite a while. It was touch and go, and
I've
I
been
had,
in a touch and go place right now myself, as you know, with the
yeah, yeah,
all the
yeah,
stuff I've been going through. And thank God for all the support I get from you and Susie and Tom and Roger and Herb and Patrick and all kinds of outpouring. I don't know what I would have done without all that support, man, to tell you the truth. I don't think I could have made it.
You're part of the family, Alan.
Can I ask
Yeah.
you guys? This is a question of both of you. You both work with people. You work with guys that are struggling. Alan works with me. Patrick, you've spoken about having some sponsees. Now, in terms of the warnings and the examples, like, is there anything kind of present tense that's been helping you in your evolving understanding of emotional sobriety and in your kind of everyday emerging new sense of recovery with the people you work with?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking more with the group, I would say. I am working with a couple of people, but I would say with the group, what I've learned so much of late is in these workshops that we've been doing, because I learned so much from these workshops, is the somatic side of things, the body, and we've delved into that a lot, and new modalities in the psychotherapy field. We've been doing workshops on IFS, internal family systems, and I find that a wonderful approach to especially understanding the parts of myself, because they talk about parts, and the way it's broken down makes so much sense, because I mean, we say it all the time. I hate that part of myself, or this part of myself that does this or does that. And so they break it down into those parts, gives name to the parts, and helps you to understand and to also embrace the parts and see those parts that we maybe put down within ourselves that are also just trying to help us cope.
Yeah.
So and just the we just did a workshop on um, shame and guilt to do with internal family systems. So that was really helpful, that stuff. And yesterday we started a new book study by Dr. Raja Selvam on the theme of his new book, which is called The Practice of Embodying Emotions. So again, it's because of this interest in emotional sobriety within the group, there has been, I've been prompted really by a lot of the members, hey, why don't we look into this? Or why don't we look into that? So I kind of like, people that always say to me, how come you get these great speakers? I say, oh, I just ask them. I don't know any, they think I'm connected in this world. I'm not. I find them online. Where do you find them? YouTube. And so then they usually have a website. And so I'll get hold of it. And so I would say in terms of emotional sobriety, that's been a fascinating journey. Of course, with Alan's work, which started us going down this road, and now it's opened up, and that's been fascinating.
Yeah.
So there's that. There's always the situation with new people. I like to sponsor brand new people and get them sort of a firm grounding in the steps. And we do our beginners meeting every Sunday. We have these simple suggestions for beginners about changing routines and behavior early on, mostly changing routines, developing new habits, And so I just came off that meeting actually. So I still really enjoy being at beginners meetings and working with people. If they ask me to sponsor them, they're brand new, I'll give them my number, and those are the guys I like to work with the most, to be honest. Kind of reminds me of myself when I come in, and brings me right back there, and maybe keeps me right sized. You know what I mean? That's what I like to do.
It's amazing the amount of action or the amount of business that you can get done through your phone. You're
Oh,
international.
phenomenal.
You do all kinds of meetings, and the
Yeah.
resources that you're wired into are pretty incredible.
Yeah, it just, like I said, none of it was planned. It just kind of sprouted with Zoom. That's where and you'll hear this all the time. What people say, this great thing that came out of, a global pandemic was this way that the recovery community connected worldwide, and it brought in sort of like, if you're going to when things get disrupted and changed, it's because of ideas that are come in from the periphery to the center that we maybe would have missed otherwise. And so Zoom gives us this great opportunity for some small group to sprout up with a new type of meeting, a new format, a new book that they're reading from, and they can get the word out to thousands of people instantly on WhatsApp and Facebook groups and so on, and have 100 people show up. You try doing that in your little local town. Be lucky if you get 2 people, 3 people show up.
I'm in a town like that right now.
Yeah, yeah. I'll never forget the first AA meeting that I started. I was coming up to a year, and I was going back to work, and I had a day job that didn't take up too much time in a restaurant, and just go and do a few hours work as a waiter. And it paid real well. It was a high-end restaurant in San Francisco. And then I wanted to earn a little more money. So somebody offered me a job in the restaurant in the evening. And I thought on Fridays and Saturday nights, real busy restaurant, great tips and everything. I thought I'll take that. But then on Friday, it left me that I couldn't go to my usual meetings. So I thought, okay, I'll start a meeting on Friday mornings at 7 a.m. downtown by Union Square. And went to the central office, and they said, well, we can't put it in the directory until you're going for a couple of months, come back and see us. And bought some literature, and they had a coffee pot. I got coffee, went round there, told everybody about it. And I thought, oh, well, we get a big showing. I went round there, made coffee all ready, went an hour in advance, and nobody showed up. And then I'm sitting there drinking the coffee, reading the book, and I'm thinking, then the guy wanders in off the street. And a guy I'd seen come into meetings who always kind of wandered in late and sat in the back and never talked to anybody. And he lived in one of the hotels downtown. He wanders in and he sits down way in the back, but there's only me sitting at the front. So I said to him, do you want to read the book? I wasn't even sure if he could talk. He moved up, and the two of us just sat there talking. It was great. It was
Cool.
great. And he ended up becoming a real part of the meeting.
Oh, great. Cool.
Because I said, me and you are the co-founders of this meeting. And then bit by bit, people came. But, on Zoom now, you can come up with an idea for a meeting, and there's a whole network of distribution of flyers. There's certain groups, all they do is distribute flyers.
Wow.
Other groups will make your flyer. You could maybe be on your first day of the meeting and have over 100 people. It's
That's cool.
wild. It's the Wild West out there.
It is the Wild West out there.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. I love it. I love what's going on in the whole Zoomosphere. But I love my live meetings. I'll go to a live meeting. What is it? Sunday. There's a really good meeting at 6 o'clock in San Francisco. My brother will be there. He's got 32 years now. Oh, it's a family disease. There's 11 of us in the family. My brother's in the program. My sister in Dublin's in the program.
Well, Bill Wilson, I think would have a big smile on his face today that he's seeing the interest in that is his dream is becoming a reality.
It feels that it fits right in with the recovery journey, so to speak. I mean, when I first came in, I was just the fact that I could just not drink and not have this urge to drink the urge went away from me in the first 30 days. Now, some people were not all the same, but just the fact that I came alive in sobriety, I really did. And again, on the second go around.
Can I ask,
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, so towards the end of your first 24 years of recovery, consecutive years of recovery, and when things kind of started to fall apart, with the benefit of hindsight, what do you think the missing component may have been with that, and especially with the eye towards emotional sobriety? Because I'm I recently celebrated 5 years of continuous sobriety. It's the most I've ever had. And there has been like a kind of because the daily obsession is lifted, but there's still a lot of furniture I have to move around, emotional furniture. And I mean, I'm just grateful that I have an idea of the work is becoming more emotionally sober as a practice, and kind of looking at my unhealthy dependencies. And there's a whole other project now that I've achieved some measure of physical sobriety. But is that something that like you were still working to grasp, at least the first time that you got sober, that maybe you're coming back around and you're having a better understanding of it now?
Well, actually, it's a really good point, because this happens for so many of us. So where is it? Somewhere between steps 9 and 10 in the big book, it says it's easy to let up on the spiritual course of action and rest in our laurels. It doesn't say it's hard. Oh, once you're wired in, that's it. You're done. No, it's easy to let up. And so many places we talk about, some people early on, somebody said to me, what does it feel like? I'd love to know, you went out after 24 years. How did that happen? And I said, well, maybe I got my 24s mixed up. you know, maybe I didn't hear. Maybe I had so much cotton wool in here. They were talking about 24 hours all along. I thought they were saying 24 years and you're done. No. So I kind of, because I'll say things in jest, because I didn't know what to say to him. I thought this sounds good. And then I thought, actually, that makes a lot of sense. And so often I'll hear from experts in the field who will say that consistency and routines, no matter what it is, being consistent is so much the key, because we can have these epiphanies and learn these great concepts, ideas, have these great experiences. Nothing lasts. Okay? All of a sudden we get into a conniption at work or with somebody, and all that knowledge has gone out the window, and we're back with trying to deal with the situation. And this is where the somatic based work is helping me right now, because then I sort of think, well, what's going on in my body right now? Slow down, locate it, and spread it around, and do a mindfulness exercise. It's like that. Not responding on instinct, on impulse. I mean,
well, it's like getting to that pause place, isn't it, Patrick?
Yeah, exactly. So, in answer to that question, I think there's no silver bullet. There's no, oh, well, if you do all this, this, and this, you're going to be fine. That's like the idea of, what is it? Spiritual calculus, well, it's not an algorithm. It's not something you can calculate. Now that I've learned what he did wrong and what I should do right, that can all go out the window in an instant when something deeply troubling comes along in an emotional situation, in a relationship situation where we thought it was this and then we discover it's not. Holy shit, And then all of a sudden, no matter what knowledge we have. So I would say that I had got to the point with my sobriety. I remember being 23 years sober at a meeting, and I was talking during my meeting about some difficult situation I was going through, and a guy came over to me after, and he was, trying to help and be helpful, and offered me some suggestions, and I remember saying to him, well, at least I know I won't drink over it. Well, famous last words. The point is that I had gotten to a point where I thought, I know what to do. If I do this, this, and this will happen. In other words, I'm in charge here. And there is a point in AA where it tells us we're not in charge.
That's right.
You see that it's a very, and Herb alludes to this a lot. We still have to go out and be in charge of our lives, right? We got to show up at work on time. With certain things, I always have my to-do list, got to do this, this, and this. And the idea being that God's not driving the bus or driving the car. I'm driving the car, but I got to take direction, like the GPS. I got to find a way. Now, how do I find a way? Well, the 11th step in the morning is an incredibly powerful way to do it. An 11th step practice, practiced every morning, and the 10th step through the day, just it becomes ingrained. I carry it around in my pocket, the 11th step in synopsis, in the little pocket cards that I get they sell them at Alano clubs and so on, the 24-hour card. I always have those, and I give them to newcomers with my name on and phone number. But I need it for myself. Yeah. To just stop and I every morning I have my little simple practice where I reflect on what I got to do today, and I wait for some intuitive thought that might tell me, you don't need to do that, you need to do this, and it'll come out of the blue. But if I don't slow down and have, so I would say what I've noticed is that you ask guys who relapse, the usual thing is not having a practice.
Yeah.
That's it. It's as simple as that. And it doesn't matter what the practice is. It's different for everybody. But there are tools that can be adopted by anybody. Quite simple tools, really.
Man, I need to get on that.
What is it they say? Simple tools for complicated people, or something like that. So it's a big question, and it is the $1 million question, because one of my oldest friends in the program, Harry, said that he would always go up to guys and offer them his number when they came back after a relapse. He liked to work with guys who had relapsed to try to set them back on the path and let them know it was okay and that they were welcome back. But he would always ask them, what do you think led up to that? And it was always not having a program. They might have even been going to meetings. I was going to meetings close to when I realized I was going to meetings, but I wasn't hearing anything. My mind was somewhere else. I was so caught up with all this stuff that was going on. And then I was on medication that I couldn't focus on anything, couldn't sleep properly, so there was a lot of dysregulation just on that.
Your point, though, is so well taken here that going to meetings does not mean you have a program.
That's right.
On the meetings, having a program involves so much more than just going to meetings. It involves, practicing these principles in all our affairs. It's
really exactly
integrating these principles and these concepts into our daily life. And, that's where even, you'll hear Herb talk about his question to Fred Holmquist one day about when did going to meetings become the program, right? And he said it was in the 70s when people said go to 90 meetings in 90 days, as if that's going to give you a program. Now it might, because of what you experienced there, but it's got to go beyond meetings. It's got it. Now, some people stay sober with just meetings. I'm not faulting them. If that works for you, fine. But there's so much more available.
There is, and it's actually it just takes a little additional time.
That's right.
Every day, but the more time I put it into it, the more time I seem to have.
Yeah, that's nice.
I have time for all sorts of other things. I'm in the flea market today. I got up at 5 this morning. Been in the flea market early bird. I get my deals, but it's and I love just this interaction. I know people there, and we're chit chatting, and I have a good time because I'm not burdened with stuff. I was very burdened with everything right before I had my relapse. Everything was a burden, and thankfully I can report it is no longer. But I think that the more work I put into the developing these practices and being involved with the workshop group and so on and so forth, the friendly circle, which I love my involvement there, and people seem to be resonating with what we're doing, and I get a charge out of that. I love to see people show up and and saying how much they get out of it. I mean, it feels great, to be part of that, and then other people coming in and being so supportive on the service level, and it's no, I mean, the recovery community has so much to offer, and especially now with the fact that we have this ability to communicate the way we are doing right here, and there's thousands of Zoom meetings going on every day all over the place. So I think that, again, getting back to how to stay sober, it's all available. It's all available. But we get caught up. I get caught up with distractions, and then one of the nice things about being involved with people from all the different groups is that maybe you find that you can fit in there too. What is it? One of our presenters said recently, I came to AA and they said it was a bridge to normal living, but then I really found out it was more like a tunnel to another program.
Great way to say it.
So I've discovered some aspects of my maladaptive behavior could use some help in other areas too. So that's another good thing of the cross-pollination of the groups,
So true. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Patrick.
My pleasure.
Wonderful conversation with you, and
my pleasure.
Appreciate you very much so. I respect you very much so, and I'm very grateful for all that you've done for so many people in terms of exposing them to these concepts.
Well, it keeps me sober, so all those people are keeping me sober. And I thank them all for my sobriety, and really, Alan, honestly, you've been just a pleasure to be around you, and I really enjoy seeing you show up in the Zoom. And we got to meet. Hey, London, May, first week, 20. And Patrick, please.
I'm hoping I can make it. It sounds fantastic.
Our AV guy.
Hey,
we're gonna need, because I think it should also be like a hybrid style, like go on Zoom as well.
Yeah, that's right.
We're looking for a room in central London.
Cool. That's great. I'm all for it. I'm there. I plan to go over to Europe around that time anyway to see some of the French Open.
That's
of course
later, I think. The 20th. Yeah. Is it?
I'm not sure the dates this year. It's so I might just be staying in Europe for quite some time. That's fine with me.
Fabulous. Well, let me know, because we have so many connections throughout Europe now. I mean, there's another wonderful thing. And just if anybody's listening to the podcast, what we're talking about is on the first weekend of May in 2024, the London AA International Conference is going to be on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th of May. And many of our members will be attending that, some of them coming over from Ireland and other parts of Europe to attend. And we thought we would have a get-together of the Friendly Circle Berlin group in London the same weekend. Not trying to compete with the conference. It's just so that we would maybe meet 2, 3, maybe 4 hours a day, maybe do 2 sessions. I don't know. We can figure out the logistics so that people can do both.
Right on. That's a great idea. I love the idea. I'm very excited about it.
Alan, yeah. I'm gonna get you a multitude of different colored berets that you can wear while you're over there and fit right in. It's gonna be awesome.
Change your life, change your myth, cultivate your narrative with whomever you're with.